Today, Friday, 4 November 2022, President Ramaphosa will address the Presidential Climate Commission on the Just Energy Transition Investment Plan. The President, as the chair of the Commission, will provide the meeting with government's priority investment and financing interventions of the JET IP, as recently approved by Cabinet and the Interministerial Committee on the Just Energy Transition Partnership for broader consultations. The session is scheduled to start at 1600 this afternoon and it will end at 5:30. We will provide the details for members of the media to be able to follow that session, and the President's address also to the Commission will be made available to everybody. On Monday, 7 November, President Ramaphosa will lead South Africa's delegation to Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, to attend the 27th Conference of Parties, COP27. The Minister in the Presidency, Mr. Mondli Gungubele, Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Dr. Naledi Pandor, and Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, Ms. Barbara Creasy, will support the President during the negotiations. The President's focus will be on securing maximum ambition in terms of climate action, the honoring of previous commitments, and the provision of enabling means of implementation support for developing countries, including South Africa. With COP27 taking place in Africa, it presents an opportunity to advance African priority issues, namely raising the ambitions on mitigation, adaptation, and support to developing countries, advance financing arrangements for loss and damage, build on progress made in Glasgow on the importance of just transitions, advance discussions on the special needs and circumstances of Africa. Following COP27, at the invitation of His Excellency Dr. William Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, President Ramaphosa will undertake a state visit to Kenya on the 9th of November. The bilateral discussions will focus on multilateral, economic, regional, and continental issues. The visit will include a business forum focusing on trade and investment between Kenya and South Africa. According to the World Bank, Kenya is East Africa's largest economy and gateway to the region, with a GDP that stands at over $110 billion as of 2021. Kenya is South Africa's largest trading partner outside of the SADC region, making South Africa the biggest seller of goods to Kenya on the continent. South Africa exported over 6 billion rands worth of goods to Kenya in 2021. As of April this year, exports to Kenya have been valued at over 2 billion rands. The state visit to Kenya offers both countries the opportunity to build on the momentum created by the November state visit last year by former President Kenyatta to strengthen and deepen bilateral relations and cooperation between South Africa and the new Kenyan administration. The President yesterday updated the country through his Q&A session at the National Assembly on energy. And just to add on that update, an important aspect and development, in his address to the nation on the 25th of July, President Ramaphosa announced a bold set of actions to address load shedding and achieve energy security. One of the key commitments the President made was the South African Police Service constituting a special law enforcement team to help Eskom confront crime and corruption. The National Joint Operational Intelligence Structure, known as NETJOINS, continues to coordinate the work of multiple agencies to address sabotage, theft, and fraud at Eskom. In this regard, 67 cases are on the court roll, and 3 have been finalized with a conviction. This is a significant step towards ridding Eskom of rogue elements that undermine one of the key tenets of achieving the country's energy security, which is the fixing of Eskom and improving the operational performance of existing power stations. There is an opportunity for members of the media and the public to track the implementation of SONA commitments, and in the interest of accountability and transparency, the Presidency would like to encourage members of the media and the public to track progress on the implementation of the SONA 2022 commitments by visiting the Presidency's SONA portal, which is www.stateofthenation.gov.za. At the last media briefing, we also shared a summary of achievements of the Ramaphosa-led administration. Today, we would like to focus on efforts to end state capture and corruption, and these are the appointment of new leadership at the Hawks, which has restored the credibility and stability of the institution and led to action against corruption. Since 2018, the Hawks have secured 4,500 convictions for corruption and other priority crimes. The appointment of a new National Director of Public Prosecutions on the recommendations of an independent panel following a transparent public process. You will have noticed that there's been a great deal of stability at the NPA as compared to some previous years where there was this constant revolving door for a number of reasons. The establishment of the NPA Investigating Directorate to prosecute state capture and other significant corruption cases. The ID has, by August of this year, enrolled over 20 corruption cases and charged 65 accused. The appointment of the SAU Special Tribunal to expedite civil claims against corrupt individuals and the recovery of stolen funds. Since its establishment, it has recovered over 8.6 billion rands. The administration undertook measures to end corruption and politicization of the State Security Agency, including the appointment of new leadership and implementation of recommendations of a high-level panel on the SSA. Lastly, this administration amended the State Capture Commission regulations to enable the sharing of information and resources with the NPA on state capture cases. Several high-profile cases that are before the courts bear testament to the success of the enablement provided by the Ramaphosa administration to law enforcement agencies in support of their fight against corruption. So we'll continue just sharing these bits of achievements and successes because there seems to be a lot of debate at the moment or assertions around the President's performance. Just to address an issue that came up in one of the Sunday newspapers concerning the suspended DG of the Department of Public Enterprises, the Presidency noted with concern a Sunday newspaper story accusing the DG in the Presidency, Ms. Phindile Baleni, and the President's Special Advisor, Dr. Pejani Chauke, of a cover-up following a protected disclosure by the suspended DG of the Department of Public Enterprises, Mr. Tlhapkudi. The Presidency rejects these false, unsubstantiated, and baseless claims. The so-called protected disclosure reached the Presidency halfway through the disciplinary process against Mr. Tlhapkudi, who lost his Labour Court bid to have his suspension overturned. Lastly, before we open the floor for questions, we had addressed this issue, but it keeps on coming up and it keeps on being repeated, unfortunately, and the President did also address it mildly in Parliament yesterday. And this is an issue concerning a Mr. Hangwani Maumela in Gauteng. To the extent that Maumela is the son of the President's ex-brother-in-law, the President has no further knowledge of Maumela, nor has he ever had any relationship with him. Furthermore, the President does not have any knowledge of Mr. Maumela's business dealings, neither was he aware of his involvement with the Tembisa Hospital or any other state entity. The President expects law enforcement agencies to conduct their investigations without any fear of favor, regardless of who may be involved, and to arrest those who are or were party to malfeasance. In the exercise and fulfillment of his constitutional powers, the President remains duty-bound to always act in accordance to the Constitution and his oath of office. This it does without any fear of favor. SIU proclamations are never signed based on individuals involved. The Special Investigating Units and Special Tribunals Act number 74 of 1996 sets out guidelines in which the President may exercise his powers. The President considers every application by the SIU on its merits, and he will certainly sign such a proclamation should the SIU, as it so often does, motivate for the need for such an investigation. There were suggestions that the SIU needs to expand its investigation in relation to this particular matter and gentleman. However, that request for a proclamation is yet to reach the President, and when it does, he will respond accordingly. I'm hoping we've addressed this issue because it keeps on coming up. So whether there's a new amount that is revealed that this gentleman has earned, or whether there are other revelations in terms of his business dealings, this position, colleagues, remains. I received questions after we addressed this matter based on the fact that there were new revelations on the issue. It doesn't change the facts that I've just laid out in respect to the absence of any relationship whatsoever between the President and this gentleman. I'll end there for now and open the floor to questions. I'm mindful that it's a Friday. In Cape Town, weekends start early. So I won't hold you hostage here for too long. I also have a flight to catch. So, sorry? I wish I could stay. I wish I could stay, but unfortunately, the duty is in Pretoria. Sir?
Hi, Mr. Magwenya, thanks so much. My name is Leilani from SABC. Just on your last explanation, you say the President knows Mr. Magwenya as the son of the ex-brother you.
Yes.
But in the House yesterday, you said that, and I quote, "I don't know that gentleman."
Yes.
Can you explain the discrepancy?
There's no discrepancy. There's no discrepancy. As
the perception that he left, at least with me, is that he doesn't know the person at all.
No. And remember, that was not the question.
Yes,
Somebody shouted this gentleman's name while the President was in the process of responding to a question, and he just responded in passing. The record remains to the extent that he knows of him as a son of his ex-brother-in-law. He doesn't have any relationship with him, nor does he have any knowledge of his business dealings. So there's no discrepancy there, because that was not the question he was responding to. He just so happened to be distracted by whoever that was howling at him, and he just responded in passing. Yes, sir.
Hi. Is it good? Okay, hi. Thanks for having me. My name is Babalo Ndenze from Eyewitness News. Just a question. November 6th is the date, I guess the deadline for the President to respond to Section 89. I think it's Sunday, the 6th. Has he had initial contact with that independent panel, and has he met this deadline, or will he meet the deadline, and has he made his submission official to Section 89? And just a follow-up linked to that, is the President moved at all caused by his own members in his own cabinet for him to step aside because of this very issue? And the Minister of Human Settlements, I think 5 days ago, made those remarks. Thank you.
Which minister is that?
That's Minister Zulu.
Minister of Tourism.
Minister of Tourism, I beg your pardon. Minister, former Minister, former Human Settlements Minister of Tourism, and as well as the former Premier of the East, the Deputy Minister, Kumulo Maswala.
Okay. We'll take another question. Yes, sir.
Hi, Paul Beckjart from Bloomberg. Two questions. First of all, the presidential address to the PCC, will it be broadcast this afternoon? Do you know the arrangements around that? Because we are waiting for a proper briefing on the JET IP, which has been promised to us on South Africa. I mean, we know South Africa has somewhat stated its position on it, but we need to know the markets, need to know the mechanics of what's going on. So
sure.
That is one thing.
Okay.
Then secondly, the President yesterday said that on Wednesday, Cabinet was briefed about the SAA deal. He said that during yesterday's session. Is there any more information on that? I mean, we're still waiting for that deal to be finalized. He said SAA was trading more successfully now in the past. He said that it was all but bankrupt. We all know that. But how far, in the briefing yesterday, did they say, was anything said about when this deal should be finalized, how the mechanics would work on it, and that kind of things? Because it's kind of, that deal is more than a year overdue now to be finalized. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll take one last question. Yes, sir.
My question would be, in his response to the state capture report, the President did not say anything about cadre deployment as well as recommendations relating to the ANC. Why is that, and when will he respond to those issues?
Okay, just remind me your name again, please.
Christian from Netwerk.
Christian, yeah. Good to see you.
Yes.
Good to see you. Oh, you're based here? I thought you were based in... should I take one more from the virtual platform? Okay, we'll take one more from the virtual platform.
Thanks, Mr. Magwenya. There's one question from Tim Tongwana of Newsroom Africa. The question reads, has the President sent his submissions to the independent panel in Parliament, and what kind of information did he submit? Thanks.
Okay. Colleagues, when you take so many questions, sometimes you run the risk of missing some of the questions. So if I do, just please shout out and remind me. Okay. So I think Bulelani, you happy we addressed. Babalwa, the President, with respect to the inquiry panel, the President will deliver his submission to the inquiry panel by 6 November 2022 as per the published rules of the panel. As you will know, those rules do not provide for a direct in-person engagement, so the President will comply with that deadline and those rules. I suppose let me just tie Ati in there because that's a similar question. Ati, the details of the President's submission, I suppose, will be made available once the panel has concluded its work, but rather let's reference the rules in that regard as to how they guide that process. Babalo, calls by members of Cabinet for the President to step down. Is that what you said?
Step aside.
To step aside. Okay. So members of Cabinet report directly to the President. Members of Cabinet have a direct line to the President. The expected professional decorum will be that should they have any concerns about their work, about the President, about the state of various matters in the country, they will address those issues directly to the President. As to calls being made through the public domain and via the media, that does seem to depart or deviate from the expected and well-established decorum of the working relationship. Babalo, what was the other question?
No, I think that was it.
You covered?
Yeah.
I think I've covered that one. Okay. Then with respect to Paul, the PCC address, we will, I had actually requested the team to distribute an advisory with details that will allow you to follow those proceedings. As I've indicated earlier on, we will make available the President's address, and in that address, the President does unpack some of the elements of the investment plan. He did yesterday, if you recall, also allude to some of the related issues with respect to funding, but this afternoon you will have a sense, at least at a very high level, of what's contained in that investment plan. SAA, yes, the President alluded to a briefing to Cabinet. Unfortunately, I've not been exposed to that briefing, but also just by way of protocol, either between DG Williams or Minister Kungubele, they will provide the details during the post-Cabinet briefing. I'm not sure when that is going to be. More information on that transaction will be made available by DPE at an appropriate time.
Just a quick point.
Yes.
The first Cabinet statement was issued yesterday with no media, and there was no mention of it in the first Cabinet statement.
Okay.
So, and you often have this thing that certain ministers will unpack, and we just never get them.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, the President yesterday, did mention that that transaction was still being finalized. So I think it's safe to assume that once all elements related to the transaction have been finalized, there will be communication. The SAA remains partly a public institution, so there's not going to be any attempt to hide the transaction or the results of the transaction. Yeah, no. It will happen. It will happen. It's a matter of public interest, and rightly so. Christian, response to cadre deployment. Some point yesterday, the President did emphasize the message around. I think he was responding to the question with respect to the redress policies that have been adopted by the government and the debate around BE, that notwithstanding the commitment of the government to that policy, meritocracy still has its role. I will imagine, even with respect to cadre deployment, where that policy or process has gone wrong, there will be reflection on that. Generally around the world, it is normal practice that governing parties will seek to deploy their best and brightest to key strategic positions in various areas of the state. In regard to South Africa, in cases where the execution or the implementation of that policy has not delivered the best and the brightest, there will be a reflection on that. But it's not something that is out of the norm in terms of general practice anywhere in the world. I think if there are specific cases in South Africa where the implementation of that policy has gone wrong, those cases will be reflected upon and dealt accordingly. With respect to the ministers, the President did indicate in his address to the nation that he's applying his mind. And I did further indicate at the last media briefing that when the President says he's applying his mind, he's not just relaxing at his lounge and pondering over an issue. There's a process that supports how he approaches those issues. He has to look at various submissions. He has to, in some cases, even order legal opinions that will assist with further understanding of these issues before he can take any action. So let's respect that he will apply his mind accordingly. He does take those recommendations seriously as expressed in his response plan, And so all those key elements of the response plan are receiving equal attention.
So, just on the issue of the ANC, I know it's a political matter, but...
Yeah, you're getting me into trouble.
But the report did make some recommendations. Why? Could you just explain why the President didn't address that issue?
Well, first of all, I think maybe let's just remind ourselves that with respect to the recommendations from the Zondo Commission, there were no specific recommendations around cadre deployment, specifically. There were only findings, but not recommendations. So let's make that distinction, and it's important that we make that distinction, that there were only findings and there were no recommendations. And so in his response plan, the President focused on recommendations, which means areas where government will work on in terms of improvement, areas where government will focus on in terms of ensuring that we do not experience the repeat of the past with respect to state capture. Okay. Tabo?
Thanks, Mr. Magwenya. It's Tabo Mkwene from the Sunday Chat. I think it's just a follow-up on the step-aside issue. Because I just want to find out, doesn't the President feel undermined by some members of his cabinet who are essentially his subordinates? Because I would imagine that in any work environment, for example, certainly I would run into serious problems if I, sitting here, publicly call for the editor or the CEO of Arena Holdings to step aside for whatever reason. Doesn't the President intend to take any action or steps, or even have an audience, perhaps, with some members of this cabinet who publicly say they will step aside?
I'm going to repeat myself and say there's an established decorum, there's an established manner of professional engagement between the President and members of his cabinet. And any individual within that structure that steps out of that established decorum, that behavior is more of a reflection on them than it is on the President. The President has never publicly berated any of his cabinet members. If he has any concerns about their performance, he will do so on a one-on-one basis. Equally, in my response to you on this matter, I will not further encourage that kind of behavior, except to say there is that established professional decorum. Anything outside of that is a reflection to those members of cabinet who've chosen that kind of behavior. Having said that, none of us are naive, and the President is not blind to the fact that we are in a period of contestations within the governing party. And so different individuals in the capacity within the governing party will choose to exercise their rights to express their views in whichever way and in whichever manner. So the President is not blind to that dynamic, and none of us should be naive to that dynamic. The issue of Phala is under investigation. You will expect cabinet members to know better that we allow investigations to run their course before any pronouncements are made. And so those pronouncements and those calls can be taken as just part of the noise that generally is there in the system. Does the president feel undermined? No, he doesn't. He doesn't feel undermined, but he's very much alive to the dynamics that I've just painted for you. I think we're done. We can start the weekend. Oh, sorry. Just before you come in, do you have more questions from the virtual platform?
Yes, Mr. Magwenya, I have two questions, and I think the first one comes from Ati again, and it says there is a media report that links the president to a Cape Town property mogul, Zahir Bali. He is reported to be a central figure in the allegedly helping Benjamin Chauke in relation to the money at Palapala. This is also included in the UGM submission to the independent panel. Can we please get a response to these reports and whether the president is aware of such, or does he know Bali? And then the second question, and it comes from Ken Hart with Development Project. The question reads, with everything the president said, how will it assist the NPOs in their plight to fight GBV in the respective local communities? Thanks.
Okay. Ati, we've repeatedly said all matters related to Palapala are under investigation, therefore we will not comment on them. Submissions made by members of parliament to the inquiry panel will be responded to in the course of the president's submission. So we're not going to debate and ventilate those issues here. With respect to the president's address to the GBVF summit, the president highlighted some of the successes arising out of the NSP, where there have been delays in terms of implementation or failures. The president did own up to those. There was an overwhelming sense coming out of that summit that we are making some headway as a country in responding to cases of GBVF. We are making some headway through different government interventions in different departments in fighting the scourge of GBVF. The president was encouraged by the enthusiasm, the level of involvement of civil society in working together closely with government in fighting GBVF. And so the president remains confident that we will continue to improve in this regard. He did focus a lot on a dialogue that needs to be held amongst men and their role, not only in the perpetuation of GBVF, but also in their role in preventing cases of GBVF. And so we will continue as a country and as a government to push for improvements, working closely with communities and working closely with the various social partners. Just again on, just to go back on Ati's question. Ati, there is either from the side of the president or Dr. Chauke, there's no knowledge of this Mr. Vali. And you're referencing a newspaper report. And so that reference is not informed by any credible investigation that we will need to consider and respond to. But as I said, all matters related to Palapala are under investigation. However, the President nor Mr. Chauke have no knowledge of this Mr. Vali. Okay. See, Paul is eager to start the weekend. Yes, Paul. Oh, sorry, Paul. Bulelani was first. Sorry, Bulelani.
Thanks, Mr. Magwenya. Just two quick ones. Does the President have a reaction to yesterday's High Court ruling dismissing the suspended public protectors ethics to the immediately return to office after her suspension was found to be unlawful? And the second question is that my colleague Sophie wants to know the President's mission when he goes on engagement at G20.
Okay, let me start with Sophie's one and say, Sophie, we are yet to release more information on the G20. Most likely we'll engage more in depth on the G20 engagements next week during our media briefing. So please bear with me on that one. With respect to the court decision on Advocate Mkwebane's application, this is an ongoing process. The President has fulfilled his part in terms of his constitutional obligation. All that's left now is for Parliament to continue with its process, and all that's left is for the courts to adjudicate on the matters before them. But on the side of the President, there is no particular reaction except to say he has fulfilled his constitutional obligation on the matter. Paul.
Sorry to get between you and the weekend, but the two bills before Parliament dealing with the FATF matter and the South Africa, whether it will be grey listed or not. Could you give us an understanding if the President, the sense of urgency the President may feel about this? Because if we grey listed, it could actually have a big impact on these investment programs going forward. International organizations would have to deal with us cautiously and all that kind of thing. So there are two bills, one from the Police Ministry, one from National Treasury. Has he asked the relevant ministers to explain in monitoring progress of the bills and the actions they're being made so that, if possible, we can avoid grey listing? Thank you.
Paul, you'll bear with me, I won't give you a lot of details around this. Is there a sense of urgency? Absolutely, yes. Is the President tracking the progress of these bills? Yes, as he always does. He has a parliamentary councillor, he has a parliamentary liaison officer, and at every given time, he is kept constantly updated on the progress of the bills, and it is a matter that is on his radar. It is a matter that, by virtue that you have these two bills from the two departments, that says we're taking the issue very seriously. There has been several engagements around it, and it is an issue that South Africa cannot afford not to resolve. Okay, I'm seeing thumbs up. Bulelani wants to start his weekend. He wants to go and file. Terence, we happy on the virtual platform?
I don't see anything.
You don't see any questions. Okay, colleagues, thank you so much. I don't know when I'll see you again in Cape Town, but it was great to see you all here. And thank you very much to the colleagues joining us from the virtual platform. Thank you.
I thought I'd introduce myself so you can put a face to the name. Maureen Merton.
I know. How are you?
Good.
So you were here?